Welcome to the SPEAKHER Podcast with your host, Camille, Essick, the podcast where creators and innovators connect. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the SPEAKHER Podcast. I'm your host, Camille Essick. Now, we are continuing to close out this year, and I want to take the time to not just reflect on conversations we had here, but also on stories that shaped Black life this year. So some of these stories made headlines. Some were quietly devastating and some are still unresolved. This episode is about what happened, what changed, and what we cannot afford to forget. Now, the state of Black America in 2025. Now, let's look at this with the bigger picture. So in 2025, the National Urban League released its State of America report. Now, this report describes what it considers this is a moment of a state of emergency for civil rights. And the report highlighted continued attacks on voting rights, rollbacks against discrimination protections. That includes the weakening of DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives across all institutions, and growing economic inequity. This message was clear. Progress is being challenged, and often quietly. It wasn't just to talk about policy, it showed up in real life in schools, workplaces, courtrooms, and communities. In terms of economic, labor, and real life pressure in the economy, economically, 2025, it's been uneven. Now, while there are conversations about growth and recovery, data showed Black unemployment, especially among young people, it's risen sharply, especially towards the end of this year. For many Black families, the pressure looks like job instability, rising housing costs, entrepreneurship, which continues to be divided by necessity, not opportunity. Now, Black families, we're working, but we're still fighting for stability. In the world of media, culture, and ownership, in media entertainment, 2025 revealed a very sharp contrast. Now, on one hand, we saw major wins in Black media. We also, experienced what we call the Ryan Coogler effect with his release of Sinners, breaking records worldwide. Also recently, the Charlemagne the God, he had just recently expanded the Black podcast effect with a landmark $200 million deal. That's major. Now, this moment has mattered because it proves that ownership builds infrastructure. At the same time, we also saw, layoffs of journalists of color, DEI departments dismantled, Black creatives speaking openly about burnout and exploitation, and 2025 made it very clear that without visibility and protection, there is a cost to be paid. Now, in a previous episode, I covered a story regarding Laura Smith Fields, and I want to continue to give you all updates on this case, and I want to take this slow because accountability also means follow-up. And more importantly, I do not want her family and loved ones to feel like she's been forgotten. So with that being said, as I mentioned previously, earlier this year on the SPEAKHER Podcast, I covered the case of Laura Smith Fields. Now, she was a 23-year-old Black woman found unresponsive in her Bridgeport, Connecticut apartment in December of 2021. And here's where the case stands as of 2025. Laura's death remains officially ruled accidental, attributed to acute intoxication. Now, y'all know that doesn't sound right to us right off the bat. If you know, you know. That ruling has not changed. However, what has continued to raise concern is how the case is being handled. Following public outcry, the Bridgeport Police Department conducted internal interviews. Detectives involved with Laura's case, including the case of Brenda Rawls, another Black woman who died the same day, were placed on administrative leave due to procedural failures. Now, here is the gag, y'all. Laura Rawls and Laura Smith Fields allegedly were dating the same guy from a dating app, and that's why this matters. Exactly. Now, the families were notified excuse me, let me backtrack. The families were not notified that their loved ones had passed away, nor when investigations were closed. So I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. Families stated they were not notified when their loved ones passed away, and they were not told when the investigations were closed. Now, Laura's family and the Ross family filed federal civil rights lawsuits seeking accountability for how the cases were handled. Now, y'all, in 2025, a federal judge dismissed those lawsuits. That is crazy. Here's what has been said, and here's what's happened. No criminal prosecution, no reopening of the case, and no public admission of wrongdoing beyond internal discipline. So today, Laura Smithfield's case has officially been closed, but publicly questioned and personally unresolved. That's why these updates matter, because not to relive the pain, but we need to track the truth. In the world of community, resistance, and abundance, despite all of this, 2025 has also shown us something else. Black communities continue to gather, organize, and imagine. Events like Black Abundance 25 brought together Black leaders, creators, organizers to focus on wellness, economic power, and collective strategy. Across the country, people continue to protest, vote, build, and care for one another, even though we're tired. We're real tired, okay? The dual reality defined in 25 is pressure and resistance, grief and growth. So in the closing reflection here, I do want to say that 2025 has not been simple. It's been very layered, very complex, and it requires memory. Some stories demand celebration, some demand resistance, and some demand that we keep asking questions even when the headlines stop. So thank you for trusting me, Camille Essick, the Speaker Podcast. And I want to thank all of you for this space as we continue to hold truth, context, and care. And this has just been a light recap of some of the news in 2025. And we're going to carry those lessons forward. So with that being said, y'all, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast where innovators and critics connect. Be blessed.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the SPEAKHER Podcast. Be sure to follow Camille on Instagram at camille.essick, Facebook at the SPEAKHER Podcast, or www.camilleessick.com.